Hi guys, welcome to my channel and welcome to my first ever YouTube video. Today we're going to be making this super duper cute and super duper easy ruffle skirt. It's perfect for beginners. We don't even need to use a pattern. Essentially we're just cutting out 4 rectangles and sewing them together. This is one that I prepared earlier, but today I'm going to be using a different fabric so that we can make another skirt and I can show you guys how to make it. So before we get started, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about me. I'm Naena, I live in Melbourne, Australia. I'm 20 years old and I started sewing in lockdown of last year. I had dropped out of my uni course and I had so many hours of time to fill. So I learned how to sew my own clothes. I pretty much taught myself. So I'm here to show you as a beginner that you can make seriously cute clothes and create pieces that you're gonna love forever. It's the most rewarding experience and you don't have to shop for fast fashion anymore. You can make whatever you want and it will fit you perfectly. And that's why I want to show you guys how to make your own clothes. So to begin with, we're going to go through what tools and equipment you'll need. You'll need your chosen fabric, your matching thread to your fabric color, and a bobbin that you can load with your thread. You'll need 3 cm wide elastic, a measuring tape or ruler, fabric chalk or a fabric pen, pins, and you'll also need safety pins, and you'll need your iron and your ironing board. And that's about everything to get you started. Now it's time for the measurements. For this project, you'll cut out 2 small rectangles and 2 large ones. So I've drafted the measurements for sizes 6 to 20, and please note that these are in Australian sizes. And if you need a different size that isn't listed, please just leave a comment below and I will help you figure out what measurements you need. And now it's time to transfer those measurements onto your fabric and cut out your 4 squares. So just a tip when you're doing this as well, it is always great to iron your fabric before you measure and cut so that you don't have any creases or parts that are going to make your measurements off. So now that you've cut everything out, you should end up with 2 large rectangles and 2 small rectangles that will form your entire skirt. And now it's time to get sewing! So to begin your sewing process, we're going to start with the 2 smaller rectangles and we're going to place them right sides together. We're going to sew a straight stitch down the 2 edges of the fabric. So to do this, you're going to make sure you have right sides together and you're going to pin down the 2 edges. This is going to form the top half of your skirt. So just remembering to place right sides together and do a straight stitch along both the edges for this part. So your fabric should look like this. Now for the next part, we're going to put our machine on a zigzag stitch and we're going to stitch over the raw edges to make sure that we don't have any fraying on our final piece. You can also use an overlocker for this, but I don't have one and I'm sure lots of you don't, so you can just use a zigzag stitch whenever you need to go over your edges. And it should come out looking like this. For the next part, we're going to be working on the waistband, so the top of your skirt. So we're going to fold over 0.5 centimeters at the top and then fold that again 3.5 centimeters. So you'll end up with something looking like this. Now you're going to want to iron that flat and pin it down so that it's easier to sew. And as you can see here, the waistband will fit into the middle of this hem. Now you're going to sew right along the edge there as I'm pointing out. And you'll also need to mark a little gap where you're not going to sew so that you can actually insert your elastic into the waistband. Next up, you're going to want to measure your waist so that you know how long your elastic piece needs to be. Once you've got this measurement, just remember to add a couple of centimeters so that you can close the elastic waistband at the end and it won't be too tight once you actually finish it. So hopefully you've remembered to leave that gap open in your waistband so that you can thread through your elastic. I always attach a safety pin to the end of my elastic so that I can use that to thread it all the way through. Once you've threaded that all the way through, we're going to secure our elastic by sewing a zigzag stitch across the two edges. So pull it out of your skirt a little bit, just like this, so that you can sew over the two pieces of elastic and that they'll hold strong and steady. Your waistband should now be looking something like this, and to finish it off, we're just going to sew a straight stitch right along that edge so that we can close off the entire waistband. And now it's time for you to do a little happy dance because you finished the top part of your skirt. Congrats! And now we're going to move on to the second half. For the second half, you want to grab your two larger rectangles and we're going to go through the same process as we did with the two smaller ones. Place them right sides together and we're going to sew a straight stitch down both of the edges, leaving you with something looking like this. And don't forget to do a zigzag stitch to close off your raw edges so you have no fraying. Okay, now that you've got your two pieces sewn together, we're going to sew a basting stitch around the top of these panels. To do this, you're going to want to put your stitch length to the highest your machine goes and use a straight stitch. Remember, do not back tack at the front or at the end. This stitch is going to allow you to gather the bottom half of your skirt so that you can attach it to the top half. What you'll want to do is measure the top half of your skirt so that you can gather the bottom half to that size. And now it's time for gathering. So to do this, you're going to want to pull on the bobbin thread, which is the bottom thread of your stitch, so that your fabric pulls along it and gathers along that thread. You'll need to do a bit of work to pull it along and even it out, and it can be a little bit tedious. You just want to be careful that you don't rip the thread when you're doing this. So just be gentle and have patience with it. Once you're done, it should look something like this. And now what we're going to do is attach the bottom to the top of the skirt. To do this, you'll want to flip the bottom of your skirt inside out so that the right sides go together of the top and bottom pieces. This will take a little bit of work because it's a little bit tedious as well, but you'll just want to work with it and try and flip the bottom inside out so that it goes over the top piece. We'll start pinning the two pieces together by matching the edges of the top and bottom piece. So start with one side and make sure you match those stitch lines up, and then move on to the other side and make sure you match those stitch lines up as well. Once you have those two edges lined up, you can start to move around the entire skirt, pinning the top panel to the bottom panel right sides together. You can also use this time to make sure that your gathers are even across the skirt, so there's no bunching in some areas and lacking gathers in others. Once you're done pinning, you should end up with something that looks like this, where you can see only the wrong sides of the fabric. And now we're going to do a straight stitch around the entire edge, so where you've pinned the two panels together. When you're sewing gathering, you're just going to want to take it slow because you don't want to end up pushing your gathers out of the fabric as you're sewing along. Once you've finished sewing together the top and bottom panels, you can flip your skirt the right way around and your skirt's going to look like an actual skirt. So congrats for getting up to this stage, and just before we finish on this, make sure you do flip it inside out again and sew a zigzag stitch across the raw edge so that you don't end up with any raw and fraying edges when you finish your skirt. And now we're up to the final stage, which is sewing your hem. What you're going to want to do is flip up your raw edge by 1 centimeter and then flip that up again by another centimeter so that your raw edge is hidden inside the fabric. Before you sew this, make sure you give your hem a nice iron so it's all flat, and pin around the entire thing as well. When you're sewing, make sure you're using a straight stitch and you're sewing at the top of that fold. So you're not sewing along the very, very edge of the fabric, but you're actually sewing at the top fold. Once you're done, your hem should look something like this on the inside and something like this on the outside. And you're done. That is all there is to it, so please go and enjoy your new and beautiful skirt. So that's how you make the skirt. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It means so much to me that you're here today. and that you might have attempted making this skirt, be sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok as well, and send me any photos of things that you make or tag me. I would absolutely love to see them, and make sure you hit the like and subscribe button too so you don't miss out on any new creations.